It's believed by astronomers that the observable universe contains 100 to 200 billion different galaxies, which are the homes to over 1 septillion different planets. Kind of silly to think we're alone in all of that, isn't it? Seeing lights in the sky isn't a very uncommon thing in this day and age, but this is a bit different than that. Between the evening hours of 7:30 and 10:30 p.m., citizens watched as a large V-shaped object and series of lights took over the night sky. Numerous reports were made that evening, causing a stir of confusion and fear to spread over the city of Phoenix on March 13, 1997. Eyewitness reports indicated that the first incident occurred at 7:55 that evening. A man residing in Henderson, Nevada had reported seeing a massive unknown object he could only compare to the size of a Boeing 747. The second witness report was made by an unidentified police officer who had been in Paulden, Arizona at the time. The officer stated that he had left his house for a drive at approximately 8:15 p.m. when he allegedly spotted a cluster of 4 red or orange lights up in the sky that had a 5th light trailing. Astonished, the officer returned back to his home and examined the lights with his binoculars until the lights disappeared south of the horizon. It became a phenomenon as more sightings were being reported in various towns. At approximately 8:17 p.m., callers in the town of Prescott Valley began reporting an enormous solid object in the sky that was so large it covered the majority of stars in the sky as it passed over. One witness in the valley named John Kaiser was outside with his family when they noticed lights to the northwest of their standing location. In John's statement, his family reported seeing a triangular pattern of red lights. One light at the peak of the object was distinctly white, standing out from the rest of the formation. Observers were unable to determine the altitude of the unfamiliar object. However, it had been reported that the object was fairly low and made absolutely no sound while flying over the mountains. Due to the high volume of calls, the sightings were brought to the attention of the National UFO Calling Center. Tim Lay was with his wife, son, and grandson during the time of the incident. He had been outside with his son in the front yard just after 8 p.m. that evening when they both noticed a tiny arc of 5 lights floating in the distance. In denial of what he truly believed he was seeing, Tim assumed his eyes were seeing a series of blimps or balloons in the sky. Tim immediately called his wife and grandson outside as the lights began growing larger and larger in size, slowly moving in their direction. Together, Tim and his wife discussed the difficulty of 5 aircrafts moving together at the exact same distance and speed. It took 15 minutes before the object was overhead. Tim was certain he had witnessed a UFO that day. Reports were made once again in 2007, however, these were quickly debunked. A local Fox News television station reported a reoccurrence of the sightings. Military officials, as well as the Federal Aviation Administration, were able to settle reports assuring residents that flares had been dropped by F-16 aircrafts during training at the Luke Air Force Base in Arizona. On April 21, 2008, however, locals in North Arizona spotted lights once again, this time in diamond and U-shaped formations. Concerned residents looked for answers. However, Luke Air Force officials denied any activity had been caused by the United States Air Force that particular evening. Controversy had followed as many skeptics tried to put meaning behind what they had seen. Investigators split the two events as distinct cases. The Phoenix Lights incident occurring in 1997 has yet to be explained, as there wasn't enough evidence to determine the exact cause. Phoenix News reporter Janet Gonzalez voiced her opinion, believing that the phenomenon was the result of illusory contours that caused citizens to see the unconnected dots as one single formation. Mitch Stanley, an amateur astronomer, had been a witness to the 1997 lights. After using a Dobsonian telescope, he came to his own conclusion that the lights were aircrafts and nothing more. The U.S. Air Force explained the second event in 2008 as the result of flares dropped from 4 A-10 Warthog aircrafts, stating that given the environmental conditions, the flares would have been noticeable to locals due to the rising heat, creating a balloon effect in the sky. People still wanted answers, so the locals turned to the governor for his reasoning. Arizona Governor Fife Symington stated in 2007 that he was witness to crafts of unknown origin in 1997. During an interview with the Daily Courier, Governor Symington said in his own words, "I'm a pilot and I know just about every machine that flies. It was bigger than anything I've ever seen. It remains a great mystery. Other people saw it, responsible people. I don't know why people would ridicule it. It was enormous and inexplicable. Who knows where it came from?" Governor Symington was able to publicly report that he requested information from the commander of Luke Air Force Base, the general of the National Guard, and the head of the Arizona Department of Public Safety. None of the officials had a reasonable answer for what occurred in 1997. To this day, the sightings that evening still remain a mystery, but there's no doubt that it turned many skeptics into firm believers. Our own technology can be a very scary thing at times. Now imagine witnessing technology so far beyond our own. On November 17, 1986, Japan Airlines Flight 1628 was en route from Paris to Tokyo. At approximately 5:11 p.m. while over eastern Alaska, Japanese crew aboard the aircraft witnessed two unidentified objects. One of the primary witnesses, Captain Kenju Terauchi, had noticed two flying objects about 2,000 feet under the plane's altitude. With nearly 30 years of flight experience, Captain Terauchi could only assume that both objects were merely military aircrafts underneath them. In a matter of minutes, his assumptions would change. At approximately 5:18 p.m., the objects veered 1,000 feet in front of the aircraft, activating what the flight crew could only describe as a reverse thrust. The lights radiating from the objects were so bright, members in the cockpit were able to feel heat hitting their faces. Captain Terauchi went on to describe the unusual movement of the unknown aircraft, stating, "The thing was flying as if there was no such thing as gravity. It sped up, then stopped, then flew at our speed in our direction, so that to us it appeared to be standing still. The next instant, it changed course. In other words, the flying object had overcome gravity." Shocked by his experience, Captain Terauchi believed that this craft could somehow disregard inertia. Air control was immediately notified. However, any additional aircrafts that the captain and his crew were staring at could not be detected on any radars, causing more concern for the team on board. After 3 to 5 minutes, the crafts assumed a side-to-side configuration. Moving for approximately 10 minutes, both objects left abruptly at roughly 5:23 p.m., moving to a point below the horizon to the east. But then a third object soon appeared in the sky. Both Terauchi and his co-pilot noticed what appeared to be a pale band of light that mimicked the speed of the aircraft. Looking at the object, Captain Terauchi noticed the size of the aircraft was gigantic and was nothing he had ever seen in his life. Taking note of its range, the crew once again informed air traffic control, but were once again told that nothing could be tracked on radar signals. Concerned, ATC offered military aircraft intervention, but Captain Terauchi declined. Flight JAL 1628 soon lost sight of the unknown craft, making a sudden secure landing in Anchorage, Alaska. Just hours after landing, Captain Terauchi was able to sketch the experience, describing each object to be square in shape, consisting of two rectangular arrays that appeared to have glowing white and yellow nozzles. If viewed from other angles, the objects would appear cylindrical. In December of 1986, Captain Terauchi was interviewed by the media shortly after the extraordinary incident. Because of his interviews with the media, Japan Airlines grounded his hard-earned position as a captain, placing him in a lower-level corporate desk job. The former captain was reinstated years after the incident, eventually living a more private life after his retirement. On December 24th, Tokyo news agency Kyodo News reached out to Paul Stuck, an FAA public information officer, in hope of uncovering additional reports. However, the case became incredibly discreet from the public. For 3 months, the FAA kept a very low profile while they conducted their investigations until they eventually made their final announcement. The case was brought to the attention of members in the FBI, CIA, and President Reagan's scientific team. On March 5, 1987, the FAA formally released their findings. On November 17th, Paul Stuck retracted earlier suggestions of a possible UFO sighting and instead stated that the FAA did not have enough material to confirm that something was there. Though there was audio evidence from the cockpit, the FAA was unable to support what the crew members had seen, so they disregarded the sightings altogether. When it comes to something you can't identify, it's probably best that you keep your distance. It was around 12:30 a.m. on September 19, 1976, when the Imperial Iranian Air Force Command Post in Tehran, Iran, received 4 reports from residents in the Shemiran City District. Unusual activity in the night sky led officials to investigate the concerns, but with no luck. Command posts navigating air traffic failed to identify any sign of aircrafts overhead. Attention was turned to General Nader Yousefi. The general could only assume reasonable explanations for the calls, believing that civilians were merely spotting stars. However, his assumptions were quickly skewed after he was able to view the very bright object in the sky as he stood in the control tower in Mehrabad International Airport. He now wanted to bring matters into his own hands. At 1:30 a.m., an F-4 Phantom II jet fighter was dispatched. Captain Mohammed Aziz Khani was in charge of the flight, proceeding 40 nautical miles north of Tehran. When approaching the unknown object at a distance of 46 kilometers, the F-4 jet immediately lost all communications and instrumentation, giving Captain Aziz Khani no other choice but to promptly turn around for his own safety. Once turning back, distancing the jet away from the object, all systems resumed functioning back to normal. A second attempt had been made by Lieutenant Parviz Jafari and his partner, Lieutenant Jalal Damirian. A radar lock was set on the object. Just as the F-4 flew towards the object, it began to move at a steady pace. Both lieutenants reported describing the flying object as a set of lights arranged in a square pattern, rapidly flashing blue, red, green, and orange colors. While following the object, a second object detached itself, heading towards the jet. In defense, Lieutenant Jafari attempted to fire an AIM-9 Sidewinder missile, but to no avail, as the jet lost all instrumentation, including communications, weapons, and controls. Unable to eject from the jet, Lieutenant Jafari had no choice but to attempt to turn back around, retrieving functionality again after keeping a safe distance. Lieutenant Jafari described seeing a brightly lit object detach and fall at high speeds to the ground. The crew expected the object to plummet rapidly to the ground. However, the object gently fell nearby an oil refinery on the outskirts of Tehran. Both crew members proceeded to make their way to the last known whereabouts of the detached piece. However, no physical evidence was found in the outskirts. A noticeable beeping sound had been reported by residents living nearby, baffling investigators and crew members. The case report was documented as information of high value. The form from the Defense Intelligence Agency stated, "An outstanding report. This case is a classic, which meets all the criteria necessary for a valid study of the UFO phenomenon." Due to its importance, the DIA distributed the files to the White House, the NSA, and the CIA. Captain Aziz Khani was able to report that he believed the UFO had been traveling between 2,000 and 3,000 miles per hour and explained his experience by saying, "It was beyond our speed and power. The F-4 also could not catch up to the object. That's when I thought this was a UFO." Later adding that no other country had an aircraft with the speed and capability that he witnessed. An additional source came about when a very similar UFO was reported over Morocco just a few hours after the sightings. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger responded to the UFO claims, stating that citizens could have potentially witnessed a meteor or decaying satellite. The incident that took place that early morning is regarded by a number of UFO researchers being one of the most astounding UFO encounters ever to be recorded. That's all for now. Remember, you may not believe it, but anything is possible in a world so seriously strange. Be sure to go check out my friends over on the Richest channel. They just uploaded their own video on UFOs, and I'm sure you're going to love it. You can either click on screen now or go into the description below, and there's a link down there for you. And of course, I will see you next time.